And we are back live in Washington, D.C. at the Students for Liberty conference. Joining us now is the Media Relations Associate for Students for Liberty, Daniel Pryor, who I have been communicating with for weeks, and he has been awesome in helping me get some great guests for you guys to hear from, and he's been really helpful in making sure that we can broadcast from here. So thank you first for that. And if you would just kind of introduce yourself to our listeners, a little bit about who you are and why you're involved in Students for Liberty.
Sure. So as you said, my name is Daniel Pryor and I'm the Media Relations Associate here at Students for Liberty. And part of my job is to basically get out media narrative on a variety of issues. And that involves things like writing op-eds, arranging radio interviews like this one, and various other things as well. I was recently on Al Jazeera for a short appearance to talk about some libertarian issues there as well. So we're trying to get on TV and into some of the more popular media outlets as well.
So what is it in particular about the message of liberty and Students for Liberty that you are particularly passionate about? What attracted you to this message versus the, heavy top-down, heavy centralized government? What is more appealing about? I feel like I shouldn't have to ask this question, but why liberty? Why is that your passion?
So, why liberty specifically? I've been a libertarian since I was 16. I basically wasn't interested in politics and then went to a seminar at a British think tank, hence the accent. I'm originally from near London, at the Adam Smith Institute. And we talked there a lot about political philosophy and the ideas of liberty, and it just intuitively, immediately made sense. And then, as is typical of so many students that are appearing at this ISFLC conference, I went away and I read all the books. I read my Friedman, my Mises, my Hayek, my Rothbard, my David Friedman, and just about any other libertarian political philosopher that you can think of. And the more I read, the more I felt as though these ideas are not only powerful and a great way of describing the world, but also beautiful. And that's something that I think libertarians sometimes neglect to emphasize, the beauty of their ideas, the beauty of the ideas of freedom. And what attracted me to Students for Liberty specifically, I graduated from university or school as you call it over here last year, was a few things. So Students for Liberty is avowedly an international organization, and there's something, again, very beautiful about feeling like you're part of a movement that has links across the world. My job involves every day hearing all the amazing stories of student activists and volunteers. And another reason that I love Students for Liberty and the reason that I decided to work here was because of the optimism in this organization. It gets very easy for libertarians to complain about things. We have a lot to complain about, and I wouldn't wish to take away that very important aspect of criticizing big government wherever it exists. But there's also a lot of great things going on in the world. If you look at various trends in things like absolute poverty, for example, and child mortality going down, Bill Gates very recently tweeted out a graph showing the massive decline in child mortality in the past few decades. And I think those sort of things can be explained by free markets and free people. And there's something to be said for being optimistic about the way the world's going, even when some of us are maybe a little worried about big government, and rightly so.
So growing up in London, right? Okay, so you grew up in London, you're here now. And I know you said you weren't super involved in politics when you were younger, but what is kind of the difference and similarities that you see between, here in the United States, our politics, and then in London, and in particular, kind of over this last election period? Where have we seen similarities?
So I'll start with differences, I think. And one of them, very relevant again to the libertarian theme, is that very rare for a Brit, I am pro-gun rights. And I feel way more at home with that position here in the US than I do in England. We've got some of the heaviest gun control laws in the world. And when I try to argue in favor of gun rights in an English UK context, it doesn't really go down very well. So that's a big difference that I've noticed over here. One of the first things I did was go out to West Virginia with some of my friends and shoot an AR for the first time, which is amazing fun, and that's something you definitely cannot do in England. In terms of similarities, I think we're seeing a backlash against the political class, both in the Brexit movement and also with the election of the new president over here. That's definitely a similarity. And there are good things and bad things about that. Libertarians, like myself, tend to be skeptical of power. The question is whether or not what has come, this new movement of Brexit and Donald Trump, whether that is a true challenge to concentrated power in the hands of the government, or whether it's just being reconfigured and being applied in other ways. That's a question that I'm sure will be explored during this conference. We've got some sessions on what the new presidential election means. Sadly, we haven't got any on Brexit, and that's something, you know, personal interest-wise, I'd love to speak about, but we can't cover everything.
I think that, you know, and I'm going to talk a little bit in the next segment of an article that kind of addresses what you were just talking about, that we see all of a sudden these people from the left who are like opposing Donald Trump and all the things that you're doing, which half of me is like, yes, we want people to question government. We want to have a healthy skepticism of our leaders. That's important. But it's like, why? Are you doing it because you see that a strong government is problematic to our liberty, or are you doing it just because you don't like who's kind of holding the reins now? And it's kind of that, how do you approach that issue? How do you think, you know, students here, I guess this is your first time that you're being here, so what is kind of your expectation going into the weekend and into the conference that you hope to get out of the conference?
Sure. So I think one of the things you mentioned there was really interesting about how there's this kind of selective opposition to power. And I think libertarians are different in that sense. We are consistently opposed to big government, whether that's coming from the left or the right. And what I hope to see this weekend, and what I think we will see, is very much that being expressed both by our students and our speakers. And it kind of frustrates me that, you know, like you say, we've finally seen the anti-war Democrats come out of hiding after several years. But I do think the time for making those criticisms is over. In that libertarians need to start building more coalitions with groups both from the left and the right, whilst kind of trying to get our ideas in about, hang on, maybe power is concentrated, and maybe we should be opposing this more effectively at all times, rather than just when there's someone you particularly don't like, than when the outgroup happens to be in office.
I think that we have a unique opportunity now to make that argument, to go to people and say, yes, I see that you don't like Donald Trump for these reasons, but those reasons would exist no matter who is in power, no matter what party, no matter what president. You know, we would still have those issues. You know, I think that we miss a lot of the times how similar the presidents are because of their rhetoric is different. And so we really have to look at the policy, and we really have to look at principle and hold to those. You know, we have about a minute left. Just real quickly, what do you hope students leave here with? Just one thing that...
So I hope that they leave here energized with the possibility of a stronger libertarian movement going into the next 4 years and beyond that. And I hope they leave excited at the fact that there is a libertarian movement across the world. It's growing, it's optimistic, and our ideas are beautiful.